Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Reasonable Doubt. We've been off for 2 weeks, and we're back on the air. I'm your host, Jimmy Ardwan. Along with my co-host, Julio Vela, we are brought to you by the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. Julio, what's going on, my friend?
Good to be back. Good to be back.
Still having Astros hangover like myself?
I am having. I'm still recovering from Harvey. Has that passed yet, or is it still going on?
Come on, man.
We've recovered
Moved
from
on. We've moved on to the Astros, dude.
Made everything all right.
Go Altuve.
Moved on, man.
Houston strong.
We've got a great show tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be here for the next hour talking with our good friends, Mark Bennett, you're past president of the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association, I think twice.
President once, vice president like 4 times.
So you're a little bit involved in the organization.
I used to be.
And our other guest this evening, coming back this is your second time, right, Paul?
I think it's my third.
Paul Morgan, third time. Who's keeping count, really? Right?
It's like the Steve Martin of Reasonable Doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, is he the longest running
Most returns.
Most frequent, maybe.
on Saturday Night Live?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
No, he's there a lot.
He is. But ladies and gentlemen, we got a great show tonight. We got some good topics to talk about. There's been a lot of stuff going on. I mean, we really could go on and on and on about a lot of things. But the first thing I want to dive into, guys, is another evidence debacle here. This Precinct 4 thing is just crazy. Okay, so of course, Paul, it was your case that really started the free fall, I guess, of Precinct 4. For those of you who don't recall, Paul was set for a trial on a drug case that, with enhancements, was 25 to life. Mm-hmm. The prosecutor kept the case on the docket, despite what we eventually learned was the knowledge that he and law enforcement knew that the evidence in the case had long since been destroyed. Kept trying to get your client to take a deal on the case. You held strong. They eventually dismissed the case, and then we find out about all these problems that Precinct 4 has. And then there's rumors going around that in Harvey, they had a flooding of their evidence room, and nobody was really getting any straight answers about that. And then I think kind of started leaking out, hey, well, we did have some problems. And now this thing. Over 7,000, almost 8,000 notices were mailed out telling those of us in the defense bar that there might be some evidence problems in your case. And I got one that went to my personal email address with my home address listed on it on a case from over 10 years ago.
What year?
2007.
Oh my God.
I think you need to make a Public Information Act request to find out why the DA's office has your home address.
Yeah. Well, I think because with the district clerk, I have both my office and my home listed.
You need a lawyer.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's why. So they may have checked the wrong box, but I mean, this is absurd. What do you, like?
And they're not recent cases.
No.
They're cases from, I got 2 of them for cases that were, I remember the guys' names, but I couldn't tell you what the cases are about without looking up my files. So,
yeah.
The question, I guess, is going to be, was the evidence destroyed before or after my client decided to plead guilty?
Well, and what do you do? Because, I mean, I went back and this was the case I got was literally more than 10 years ago that it gets resolved. And I went back and pulled the file. I had to look first on the district clerk site to see, like, what the heck was this case? And it was resolved for a deferred. So the case, not only has all the evidence been destroyed, literally, and may have been destroyed before the DA's office signed the order authorizing destruction of evidence, but my client's completed the deferred. It's been dismissed. What's the remedy?
So habeas.
Yeah.
Because even after you complete your deferred, it's affecting your life.
Mm-hmm.
So you're restrained. You can file a habeas petition. But what's the harm? What's the wrong that's been done?
Yeah.
Well, if the evidence was destroyed before the plea, I guess the wrong is that exculpatory evidence was not disclosed to you, right? The Brady material wasn't disclosed. That Brady material being that the evidence has been destroyed.
Yeah.
But if the evidence was destroyed after your plea, what's the harm?
Well, no kidding.
Do the notices indicate whether the evidence was when the evidence was destroyed?
No,
they don't even.
No, it's a very general notice. It doesn't even say whether or not evidence was actually destroyed in your case. It just says that your client, back from whenever, may have had evidence destroyed during this whole fiasco.
And the efficient way for the DA's office to have done this, I don't know that this is what they did, but the efficient way for them to have done it would just have been to make a list of everybody who had a Precinct 4 case, send them a letter, let the defense lawyers figure it out on their own. And that may very well be what they did. It may be every Precinct 4 case is going to get a letter.
What ethical duties do you think that we, as defense lawyers, have towards our clients? Like, if we get one of those letters and we give it to our clients, what should we be doing?
No, I believe in client loyalty. I believe that once we represent somebody, we stick with them unless they get pissed off at us and fire us. But generally, I believe in client loyalty. We stick with our clients. So I think if we get the letter, we need to first do our own investigation, pull the file, see what the case was about, see if there might have been some evidence in the case whose destruction would have affected the outcome of the case. And then we need to figure out individually or collectively how to find out when what was destroyed, right? Not just hand it to the client. Now, what if somebody comes to you, what if Joe Schmo's client comes to you, former client comes to you and says, hey, Joe Schmo, he gave me this letter. He was my lawyer, but he doesn't want to represent me anymore. Then what do we do? Get money to do the same thing, I suppose.
Yeah.
Do you think that's what the district attorney's office did? Send a notice out from the last 10 years of everything that came out of Precinct 4? Or do you think they did an audit of the evidence that knew was destroyed, then tagged it with the evidence, and then found who the defense lawyer was and sent the notice?
Allegedly, these are all supposed to be defendants that were affected during the evidence scandal that happened a year and a half ago. These aren't just like all Precinct 4 cases that happened during a particular period of time.
So even though the letter says you may have been affected, you think that there's already been a first level of triage where the DA's office has concluded that these cases were somehow touched by the destruction of evidence?
That is my understanding. That what I think happened is that they probably went through the destruction logs and the chain of custody documents that they gathered during the audit, and then they figured out these cases they figured out which cases that were affected, and then put them into two categories. They put them into the pending category, and then they put them into the adjudicated category. So when Devin Anderson pressed out her, what was it, like 650 or 700 notices, those were only for pending cases. And then when Kim took over, she ended up finishing the investigation and ended up looking into all of the adjudicated cases that were affected by the evidence dump.
From what you know, do you think they're going to be able to tell when a particular piece of evidence was destroyed?
That is a good question. When I got when my case started to go south, and I started to figure out that evidence was destroyed in my case, I actually got a destruction log, and it told me exactly when the evidence was destroyed.
Okay.
So you mean to tell me that there could potentially be 7,000 cases that were just like yours,
Yes.
where, or more than one or some?
Well, in most of them, you probably didn't have a prosecutor who was pushing for a plea knowing that the evidence had been dismissed, which is highly, highly unethical, probably disbar-worthy. We'll talk about that some other time, I suppose. But in most of the cases, you probably didn't have that. But yeah, there might have been other cases where there was that same combination of facts that you discovered in your case.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but I mean, so here, if you've got somebody who, let's say we go back to, we'll not go back as far as my case, let's just go back half that. Let's go back 5 years to 2012, okay? And let's say it was a drug case, and somebody got 10 years TDC and is still in custody. I mean, that person has a legitimate issue,
Right.
okay? But somebody who finishes a 2-year deferred back in 2012 and is no longer, the case gets dismissed, I mean, I don't know what you're supposed to do there.
Well, so
I mean, is the state going to then pay for your petition for non-disclosure because they destroyed the evidence and you took a plea, you know?
well, a petition for non-disclosure is not good enough. You're still,
Right.
I mean, you're still suffering the consequences of that deferred. And I think that even after you're off the deferred, that habeas still lies. It's a question of restraint. Are you still restrained? Are you still suffering adverse consequences? If you're not, then no problem. You know,
Yeah.
nobody's turning you down for jobs. You're not unable to get apartments. No worries. But if you are, then that's good enough to get you back into court on an application for writ of habeas corpus. I think that's a separate question from what do you do about it and what do you argue.
Yeah.
But I know the vehicle is habeas corpus and the requirement is restraint.
And what happens, I mean, the other thing too is the tremendous cost this could be to the county because out of 8,000 cases, let's say ballpark that 40% of those cases were court appointed. And it's probably higher than that, but I'm just going to ballpark it at 40%. So we're looking at what, 3,000 cases that the person originally had a court appointed lawyer? How much money is that going to cost the county to then reappoint somebody to go in and investigate the problems? You know?
Or is the court even going, or does the court have a duty to do that too?
No, because you're not entitled to appointed counsel on a writ.
God, it's phenomenal.
Well, I know that there have been talks about getting appointed counsel or someone to, or like a group of defense lawyers to look into this to see if there are grounds for anyone who was affected by Precinct 4. So I know that there are lawyers out there that want to take the initiative and hopefully get funding from the CCA or from the county to, you know, spearhead this issue.
And in your case, the evidence was destroyed while the case was pending.
That's right.
And that's not even the worst part of it, JV. That could have been sheerly accidental. The worst part is that the prosecutor, I hate to repeat myself, but the worst part is the prosecutor tried to get his client to plead guilty knowing that the evidence had been destroyed and they couldn't make their case against him. Knowing it.
The sad part here is that we're involved in the day-to-day defense of people, and we see stuff that that other people are like, man, I can't believe that happened. And the four of us, even here, just sitting here talking about it, we've had moments of silence because we're just so stunned. Mm-hmm. You know, that this kind of magnitude could happen. It's like, how does something like this go unnoticed for so long that nothing can happen? And that begs the question about what's been going on over at 1201 Franklin on the 6th floor for the last decade, in conjunction with Precinct 4.
Right.
You know?
Right. We call the DA the lead law enforcement officer of the county, but there's no supervision. There hasn't been any grown-up supervision of law enforcement for, as you say, a decade more than a decade.
At least, and also, I mean, the former constable, Ron Hickman, eventually got elected sheriff.
That's right.
That's right. What is it about Precinct 4? I mean, what is it? I mean, we're not hearing this from other precincts. I mean, to this scale, let me just rephrase that.
I don't know, something about the demographics of the precinct, perhaps. Lots of money there, so there are a lot of defendants who fight their cases, and so stuff comes up in Precinct 4 that we never discover in other precincts.
Well, and I don't know about y'all, but I mean, I've kind of witnessed, as long as I've been practicing, that Precinct 4 is kind of where you get the more cavalier deputy constables, if you will. I don't notice the level of aggressiveness in enforcing from a constable's office anywhere in the county other than Precinct 4.
Yeah.
You don't see it in Precinct 1.
No.
You don't see it in Precinct 7. You don't see it anywhere but Precinct 4.
Maybe it's just a decades-long culture there that started with somebody that was running the place before we were even born.
Well, the precincts aren't subjected to civil service. With HPD and the Sheriff's Department, there are guidelines that they have to meet in order to get specific funding. I don't remember if it's state or federal, but if these peace officers aren't meeting these specific standards, they get their budgets cut. The precincts aren't subject to that. And in fact, their whole structure and how they go from deputy to lieutenant, sergeant, whatnot is largely based on like a who do you know, wink nod type thing instead of like a merit-based boost. So you get a lot of deputies, you get a lot of constables that just really aren't doing the best job possible. Like here, I'll take my old case and give you the thing that really set the house on fire. So when I took the dash cam and I watched it, I was reading the offense report, and in the offense report it said that the deputy saw my guy throw a bag outside of his car after he parked, and then get out of the car, hide it, and then get back in. Well, we got the dash cam, and the dash cam showed the officer doing something totally different. He just went behind Mr. Bellamy. Mr. Bellamy parked, and he never got out of the car. And you never even see a bag getting thrown out of the car. And when I started to deal with that with Bianca, I was like, look, these two things are so diametrically opposite, like what's going on. And she called the officer, and the officer said, wow, I didn't even know my dash cam was going.
They caught that?
Yeah.
Oh, strange.
That's hilarious.
Brave new
Not
world where
hilarious.
cops are held accountable by
Jeez,
video.
what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, this is, it's really just, I don't know, man. We've had problems with we've had some problem. Obviously, we had the crime lab debacle. And we've had some issues with the HPD property room, but we've had nothing to this scale. I mean, almost 8,000 notices going out.
Well, and their
Going back
video
10 years.
log went off. I remember around the same time, 500 videos got lost. Their video machine was messing up too.
But what this makes me wonder is, it went for so long and we haven't had these issues to this scale with HPD or with some of the others. But is that because people were turning a blind eye and that we haven't done a proper audit on the other agencies, a la what's been done at Precinct 4? I mean, what if we went in and did an audit of HPD?
Did you see the audit that they did at Precinct 4?
No, I haven't gotten a chance to look at it yet.
It was a page long.
Really?
It was the saddest excuse of an audit report I've ever seen.
You mean like the,
was
the
so-
cover sheet?
So it was a
No,
page long,
it's
but yet
like
they
a-
send out almost 8,000
it was a tweet.
notices from a one. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
Is it 140 or 280? I don't want to get you started on that.
But yeah, Channel 13 came to the office and they showed it to me, and I remember looking at it and going, "Where's the rest of it?" It was like seriously just a page. It was nothing remarkable.
How do you get almost 8,000 notices out of a one-page audit?
Everything's clear here. Like what?
Well, okay.
Where's for the
These aren't the
viewers?
droids you're looking for. Move along.
Smile emoji.
Yeah. Where is Precinct 4? Where is it?
It's up near, it's
Spring,
north side.
Humble,
Yeah.
Cypress area.
Yeah.
Yeah, like right in the cusp of like Montgomery County.
You know what kills me,
So-
guys?
yeah.
Is this comes out, this scandal comes out, I don't mean to break up your thought, Mark, but this
Bad
scandal
joke.
comes out the same week that we get the Houston Press shutting down and firing laying off all its reporters.
I did not know about this.
Yes.
No more hard.
No more hard copy, and they laid off Megan Flynn and a lot of other
Greg
reporters.
Malisoe?
Yes.
They're still freelancing for Free Press though.
Sure, but I'm afraid that the reporting that's been done, the investigative reporting that's been done, because let's face it, I mean, the press is the Houston Press has been the one doing the hard-hitting criminal justice investigative reporting.
Yeah.
The Chronicle has not at all. I mean, the Chronicle does not do the hardcore, in-depth stuff that the press does, in my opinion.
What says you, Mark?
I don't know. The press has done. Houston Press has done some good work. The Chronicle's done some good work. Thinking about our friend, the redheaded
Lisa
writer,
Falkenberg.
Falkenberg's done a
Yep.
bunch of good stuff on the justice system, and in the press, I've seen press stories that had just stuff that was just made up because
Sure.
the person writing the story just wanted to believe it. I haven't seen the same thing with the Chronicle, so I think maybe you're being a little hard
Maybe I'm
on
a
the
bit hard.
Chronicle. We'd always like to see better things from the media.
Maybe it's because their website is
also
always.
Well, and yeah, they for the vast majority of my career, the Chronicle has been adulatory toward the prosecution and barely mentioned the defense. They'll write about a trial, and
Yeah.
and they've gotten a little bit better actually. Brian Rogers down at the courthouse,
Sure.
I think they've gotten better about that. But for most of the time that I've been practicing, there's been a conspicuously pro-prosecution
Yeah, I mean,
slant
look,
in the Chronicle's pages.
Prosecutors always get mentioned in the paper.
Yeah.
Defense lawyers hardly ever do. I mean, it's and
We're showing our colors here. Jim.
yeah. No, I mean, look. This
I
is,
just want to be in the paper. That's all.
well, but this is clearly a biased panel too tonight. Let's be honest. I mean, if you came here to hear about prosecutor support and law enforcement support on the stories we're going to talk about tonight, you've come to the wrong place, ladies and gentlemen. Let me tell you, switch the channel. You got something?
Yeah. Well, what's the okay? So we get the notice. Hey, your evidence in this case may or may not have been destroyed at some point before or after your client won or lost. Come check out the property. I mean, there's not going to be any, right? Do you get the destruction log? What would be the step 1, step 2, step 3 that?
I think you need to first PIA, do a Public Information Act request for everything that they have. Then if you can get,
So everything they have related to the evidence in that case?
yes, the PIA everything that's related to that specific case, and then if you can get a judge to sign off on a motion to inspect, go see what's actually there. And then at that point, take the logs, take the evidence that's available, and also take the disposition of the case and start looking at
Well,
grounds for
so the DA's office has all of this stuff that we'd be PIAing already,
At least information of it, right? That's right, because you got a letter from it, maybe.
right? Maybe that's the place to start, is give Brian Rose a call and say, hey, Brian, how would you feel about this particular PIA request?
I got about 5,000 of them.
Can you just send me a database?
Okay, and so let's say evidence destroyed while the case was pending. You have a disposition where an individual now, their life and liberty is still being restrained. Then what?
That's a good question. I was talking about that with Nicholas Hughes, and he seems to think that you would have to make a really creative ground on a writ, or you'd have to go after the defense lawyer and say that he was ineffective for not going to the property room, seeing that the property was there, and you would have to then convince the judge that this ineffective assistance harmed your client and you should be entitled to relief.
But, well, supposing, hypothetically, that say 6 weeks before the plea, I go to the property room and sure, the property's there and they're all geared up for trial. I think they're going to be able to prove this case. And then between then and when my client pleads guilty, they destroy the evidence. How am I possibly ineffective?
I've played that scenario in my head, and I don't think there's any. I don't think there's getting. I don't think you can get around that, because when I came onto my case, the evidence was actually still available for a couple months before it got destroyed. So I could have went, saw the evidence, and then totally missed that issue.
Right.
And then playing it the other way, if it's going to be incumbent on us to check the property before like every setting,
Right.
that's going to be like the only thing we do.
And if you're in trial, you have to check it every morning before trial begins to make sure it's still there.
Make sure it's still there.
Until it's been.
I just pulled my
admitted
notice that I got, and so it says, I don't even know if you have to do a PIA request, because it says, very last paragraph, should you desire to check on the status of or personally examine the evidence, which doesn't exist according to them, or may not exist, in your client's case.
Maybe they're talking about the evidence of non-existence.
Exactly.
Right.
Please
It's all in my head.
contact the records custodian. And they give the exact person, Christian Nicholson, lieutenant, and the records custodian.
Well,
So it's almost
any
like an open invitation.
any request to him could be justified under the Public Information Act.
Could.
I mean, the Public Information Act request is just please
Writing
provide
a
me
letter
this
and-
information.
yeah.
So yeah, well, maybe saying the same thing. But how about failure to disclose exculpatory information? How about a Brady argument on habeas?
Do you think that the due process claims in a habeas would get someone relief? Like what I'm thinking is you plead guilty, and if you're pleading guilty, the judge accepts the plea, and if the evidence gets destroyed, how do you convince the judge that the evidence being destroyed isn't like a free pass or like
That your plea would have been different had you known that the evidence
right.
had been destroyed. But I think that would be part of your burden on habeas, is to show that not just that the evidence was destroyed and that you weren't told about it, but also things would have been different had you been told. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that it's time?
To talk about something else.
Yeah, but I want to end on this before we move on.
I detected a segue coming along.
Yeah, is it time for us to get an independent? I mean, I know the DA's office did this one-page audit, but I mean, should the county have somebody who's not associated with the DA's office come in, an independent authority, come in and actually do audits on a regular basis on law enforcement and property rooms?
I think that they do. I think the Harris County District Attorney's Office actually isn't involved with any of the audits, because I was on Kim's transition team, and that was one of my recommendations, that Harris County should be conducting routine audits of these precinct property rooms. And they said that while they're going to be working with the precincts, that they're not going to be the ones that are going to be conducting the audit. So I think that there is either a county auditor or an independent auditor that goes to the property rooms and checks. But I think they're trying to move to a centralized evidence room where instead of each precinct having their own evidence storage locker, that there's one centralized storage unit, and that all the precincts keep it there, and then that's independently monitored and maintained.
So one of the things that I read about Precinct 4 was that there was just one officer in charge of the evidence room. So there was no redundancy, so that before something was destroyed, they didn't have to have 2 people sign off on it. And I think just an audit of the procedures would be really interesting to find out what other law enforcement agencies are vulnerable to that sort of mistake.
Yeah.
Call it a mistake.
Well,
That's
I'm
what
gonna
the grand jury called it.
You're right.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is not the last evidence scandal we're going to hear about here in Harris County. But
What's the over and under in evidence scandals in the next 12 months?
yeah, I'm not even going to predict those odds.
I think 2 more. I'd go 2.
Two more in the
Say
next
2
12
more.
months.
Yeah,
2 more.
yeah.
All right.
Well, let's move
that's a good number.
And we'll open up the phone lines here, probably about 5 or 10 minutes, take your calls. We also got Twitter up tonight, at HCCLA_TV. If you can, to please our guest, do it in under 140 characters. Do not use up your 280. Please do not do that. You will severely anger
It's weak
Mark
and
Bennett.
lazy. It's intellectually incompetent to use more than 140
Hey,
characters
you know
on
what
Twitter.
they say. You know, Mark Twain said, "I would have written a shorter letter if I had more time." Right?
Right, somebody said it.
Yeah.
We sponsor the use of emojis.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
as many as you like, as long as it's 140 or fewer.
How about this Twin Peaks trial, guys? Let's move on to that.
Speaking of prosecutors,
Because this is some interesting stuff. So closing arguments were today, and Mark, I know you've been up there watching your mentee,
I watched
protege,
a couple days of
Casey
the
Gautreaux.
trial. Yeah.
And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, Casey has agreed. We reached out to her today, and she will come on the show at some point once she has recovered from this trial. And we look forward to having her on the show to discuss what it was like in the trenches with the lovely and talented Abel Reyna, who, according to Mark, was wearing a $20,000 Rolex while talking to the jury.
Ian, I say it's a $20,000 Rolex just because if it comes back to him, it'll hurt his feelings that I called it a $20,000 Rolex.
Wow.
Because it's probably more like 40. But yeah, this is a public servant wearing a $40,000 wristwatch while talking to a jury in Waco, Texas. There are lawyers, there are advocacy teachers who say that we shouldn't wear expensive watches because it alienates us from the jury. I kind of think the juries want to see, they expect it of us. They expect Jimmy to be wearing something better than an Apple
iWatch.
Apple iWatch, right? I mean, I think they expect in lots of cases, at least, a murder case, they expect the criminal defense lawyer to look like a criminal defense lawyer, dress like a criminal defense lawyer, wear a watch like a criminal defense lawyer. I don't think they expect a prosecutor to wear a watch like a criminal defense lawyer. And it rubbed me the wrong way. A lot of things that happened up there rubbed me the wrong way.
Well, there's so many issues to go into with this trial. I mean, the investigation that's going on, the fact that we have confirmed an FBI investigation into the DA's office themselves, the recusal, the refusal to recuse by the judge, then ultimately the recusal by the judge, the refusal to recuse by the prosecutor, Abel Reyna, who went ahead and started the trial with Casey, and then halfway through the trial on the other cases said, well, I'm recusing from those.
So he's still on the case with.
He's still on the Carrizal case.
Yeah.
And they argue the jury's out right now.
How does that affect him? Let's say Carrizal gets convicted. How does something like that, Reyna recusing himself from the other biker cases midway through Carrizal's trial, how does that affect him?
So my understanding is that that Reyna didn't have the role in the Carrizal case that resulted in his recusal from the other cases. That there was participation as a witness in those other cases that didn't exist in the Carrizal case. That's my understanding. Supposing, however, that the same grounds for the prosecutor to be disqualified, I guess recusal is not the right word, to be disqualified exist in the Carrizal case as in the other cases, I don't think it's unless the defense asked for it in Carrizal, which I don't think happened, I don't think it's an issue on appeal. Might be an issue in habeas.
Depending on what happens.
Depending on what happens
down the road.
in the direct appeal.
Yeah, I mean, and this is one of those things. I mean, but what if he's the only person convicted and everybody else goes free?
Right. Right. Well,
you know.
honestly, you're right.
And
So-
obviously we don't,
so-
and I'm not prognosticating that, but I'm just kind of playing out different theory, different scenarios of what might happen.
and who was appointed as the special prosecutors pro tem?
It's on the tip of my
Ali
tongue.
Fazell,
Was he?
wasn't he?
Was it Ali?
It was, and a couple of other guys.
Yeah. I'd heard Brian Benkin.
Benkin,
Fazell?
Fazell, but there was somebody else. Anyway, people. Oh, Brian Roberts.
Oh.
People, I would rather try a case against Abel Reyna than against Brian Roberts.
Yeah.
But Brian Roberts might be more likely to dump the whole thing than Abel Reyna. So it's sort of a, if it really is a dog of a case, he's more likely to let it go.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's not really a dog of a case, you'd rather try it against Abel Reyna and his
$40,000 Rolex.
Be careful what you wish for.
his goon squad, right?
It could always be worse.
Things could indeed always be worse.
How is the case that's going on right now different than the rest of the biker cases?
It's the first one up. So there are two motorcycle clubs that are involved in this confrontation, and there are bikers from both sides killed. The cops did a substantial amount of the killing. There are the Bandidos and there are the Cossacks. And the defendant on trial now, Jake Carrizal, is a Bandito. So, and there are other Bandidos who are charged, and then there are Cossacks who are charged. The case against a Bandito might be different than the case against a Cossack, just because of sort of how they came to this scene where this thing happened. The case against Carrizal may be different than the case against another Bandito because of his leadership position in the club. He was the vice president of the Dallas chapter at the time.
I'm wondering,
So those are the differences.
well, I'm wondering why the disqualification of Abel on the rest versus this one. Why?
I haven't followed that side of it, but my understanding is that he actually testified as a witness in part of the case against the others. I think that it was Clint Broden from Dallas, who has several of these defendants and just pushes and pushes and pushes and sends his pleadings to the newspaper whenever he files them. I think that fairly early on he had something go down where he was able to get Reyna on the stand, and I think that there were some inconsistencies between what Reyna said and what a cop said. But like I said, haven't followed that side closely. That's sort of my vague understanding of how that disqualification came down.
How did Casey's case be the first one?
When she was hired on the case, I guess when she was retained on the case, it was already the first one.
Ah.
And there was another lawyer on it who apparently hadn't done a whole lot to prepare, and the DA's office was perfectly happy to take that case to trial first. Once she was on the case, they tried to sort of slow roll her case, and maybe with hopes of getting somebody else up first. But I think there are a lot of lawyers on that case who are just sort of on the case, waiting and seeing what happens without doing a whole lot of preparation.
Sure.
And I think she had 7 months to prepare, 6 months to prepare for this. What's been 20 days of testimony.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And in the midst of that, the DA's office turns over witness interviews, documents that had not previously been produced to the defense.
So Abel Reyna has been telling the court all along, we've given the defense everything. We've given the defense everything. We've given the defense everything. And then more stuff starts to come out. Okay, well, we didn't know that the Waco PD had that. Okay, well, it's your job to know, and you told the court that you gave us everything, so would you please give us everything? And the judge says, give her everything. And finally, into trial, maybe a week into trial, maybe a week and a half into trial, the judge signs an order to each of the involved agencies ordering them to produce everything to the defense. And at that point, the DA's office says, oh yeah, we've got this statement that was recorded in the DA's office that we haven't turned over. So the elected DA is lying to the court, right? Yeah. Because either he doesn't know what was turned over and he's acting as though he does, which would be a lie, or he knows that it wasn't turned over and he's telling the court that was, which I think is probably what happened. And
but
that's a lie.
wasn't he in the room when the statement was made?
He left the room,
right.
because that's right. He was in the room when the statement began, but he left the room because he knew that the witness was lying. that's not justification for not turning something over. And this is the same mistake that the state made in the David Temple case,
Right.
where he got habeas relief years after being convicted because Kelly Siegler had made this call, oh, we don't have to give that to the defense because we don't believe it to be true. Prosecutors are going to have to learn that whether you believe it to be true or not, it's exculpatory and you have to give it to the defense. Was it true? Was it not true? It doesn't matter. It's still Brady.
Yeah, I mean, what?
Now, the other thing about that in this case is that it would have affected the way that the defense tried the case from the beginning. So
Right.
not only
Exactly.
not only would
And all
we,
she got was like a day off to review it.
45 minutes, I think.
I thought they had
no,
recessed.
I think she got some. Oh, you can look at it overnight. We're going to get out early today.
She moved to have it dismissed for prosecutorial misconduct. That ended up getting denied, and then she asked for a continuance, and the judge gave her 45 minutes to look at everything,
Yeah.
which I think that's horrible.
It's absurd. If I was a judge, if I was a judge, I would know that the entire planet of everyone interested in this case is watching, and knowing that I could get flipped, I would probably I'd do everything I could to.
But you'd try to give everybody a fair trial, and the fact is that not a lot of people are watching this case. People have forgotten about it, and the chief prosecutor, Abel Arena, the guy with the $20,000 wristwatch, your former law partner.
Yeah.
If you're the judge, right? So it's Waco, it's incestuous, it's the lawyers there. From what I've seen of the lawyers in the prosecutor's office, they're not great lawyers. And when you have a DA's office that's not strong, what do you get from the defense bar? You get a defense bar that's not strong. What do you get on the bench? You get a bench that's not strong. I have an appeal up there where the first line of the appellate prosecutor's brief is, defendant did not ask for oral argument in this case. You know what the first line of my brief to which he was responding was? Defendant requests oral argument. He files this brief with the Court of Appeals where the first line of it is blatantly untrue. It's just, I don't know, I think that people don't hold their feet to the fire, and so they don't get good. And when you have an incestuous little community where the judges give the prosecutors whatever they want, prosecutors don't have to be competent. And as a result, you have the same incompetence in the bench.
Well, and it's probably a
Prosecutorial
situation like a lot of smaller counties where it's who you know, and they don't really have to go to trial because they've known each other their entire lives. They're going to work things out. Well, look, we don't really want to work real hard on this thing.
Right.
Let's kind of figure this out.
They're going to work things out to their mutual benefit.
Right, because I will say, if you go to small counties, a lot of small counties, you get a lot better deals when you go in there on certain cases that you might not get a good deal on. And I'm stunned sometimes when I go to smaller counties other than this, what they're willing to offer. I mean, it's almost like, you're kidding, right? You're willing to offer that? Like, I'm stunned,
Like Montgomery County, right?
Yeah, exactly like that. No, but I mean, one of the first, and obviously I was fortunate enough to still come up in the day when we had a ton of no test, no accident DWI trials that you could just try them, and you would cut your teeth on that, and you could, try a dozen of them in a year easily. Dozen was that was nothing, right? And you'd go to, for instance, Travis County, which was a smaller county, and if you go in and you bow up to the DA and say, look, man, we're just going to go try this thing because you don't got a great case, they'd hem and haw and stomp their feet, and then all of a sudden they come back and they say, will you take a Class C seatbelt violation? You're like,
No, my guy was wearing a seatbelt.
you're like, wait a second, what? All I had to do was put up a fight, and you're going to say, will your guy take a Class C seatbelt violation? And no lawyer in their right mind is going to say, yeah, let me risk my client getting a conviction on a Class B misdemeanor that'll never come off his record versus doing deferred on a Class C seatbelt. I mean, you'd have to have your head examined and go turn in your bar card if you told him to turn that deal down. But it's like, God. So I think there's a culture of that, hey, look, we all grew up together. We all went to high school together. Let's just work this out, and we'll go have some drinks about 2:30.
And I know that you all have people clients come in who are charged in small counties all the time, and they have somebody representing them because they're friends, 20-year friends with the DA. And I say to them, look, that guy's got a 20-year friendship with the DA. He's got a 6-month relationship with you.
Yep.
Which do you think wins? Right? The 20-year relationship with the DA. If something is going to yield, they're going to toss you to the side, and they're going to go off and play golf, and never even think about it again.
I had a case down in Austin County where the elected DA would actually go into the oh man, what's his name? Is it like John Cone or
Travis Kane.
Travis Kane? Yeah,
Kane.
he would actually be in the courtroom, and I had a case. I brought it to him. I was like, "Look, what can we do with this?" And he started going on and on and on. He's a really nice guy, but he told me, like, "Look, down here, not only do you go to church with the people you prosecute, but you also hang out with the people who are in the courtroom, law enforcement, defense lawyers, whatnot. Everyone knows each other. Everyone knows the judge. Everyone knows me. So when I handle my cases, I handle them with a little more care because you never know who you might be prosecuting."
Yeah.
I had and it's so true. We played the same game. The guy's out and has two cases, one out in Fayette County and one here, and he's a multiple felon. And I say, well, let's see if we can finesse something out in Fayette County, and then come work out this Harris County. So we finesse a little deferred, a multiple felon, a deferred out in Fayette County. And so now I say, okay, now we're going to play a long game in Harris and just kind of fly under the radar for a good 8-9 months. Sure enough, 8-9 months pass, and the guy's been on deferred for 8-9 months out in Fayette County. And my guy's a multiple felon. I'm here, and and we're approaching the judge, and I'm saying, hey, look, he's already on probation over there for a good 5 years. He's been on it for 8 or 9 months, and he's been doing great. Why are we going to violate? Why are we going to put probation? Why are we going to put this guy in prison? And what for? And the argument worked. And it was the same kind of thing that we know we can get this deal out here. We can use that deal as leverage over here to keep you out over here. So we got deferred over here too, and that's the same. And if that Fayette County play hadn't been in place, not a chance on the planet in the district court up here for the type of offense that he was charged with, multi-felon, would he have ever gotten a pass? It's not a pass because it's deferred, but never would he have stayed out of prison. But he did because we were able to finesse the small county and then use it over here. It happens. It happens, man.
Well, in this county, Frank, McLennan County was not prepared. They do not have the resources to handle this case.
They didn't need to.
No, they didn't need to. They really didn't. But what you're seeing now is just the disorganization of everything, and some of it may be malicious. I don't know. Casey certainly thinks it is. We saw her video.
Criminal. It's criminal.
And it very well may be. Who knows whether or not it'll eventually be proven to be prosecutorial misconduct or just blatant incompetence. The fact that they're understaffed, under budget to handle the prosecution of 171 individuals on engaging in organized criminal activity cases. That's another thing that I think needs to be brought up here is this office is not really equipped to handle these kind of cases. And the discovery, the forensics, managing all this discovery on 171 different cases.
Yeah, I don't know. It could be the same evidence, the same discovery on 171 cases. So are they prepared to do, are they a big enough office to do this on one such case? Yeah, I think they probably are. So I think that gives them too easy a pass to say they're just too small an office with too few resources to do it. It's the scaling up of the number of defendants in what was one incident should not be substantial. It should be, okay, we'll do discovery. Here is your 5 terabyte drive, and this has your discovery on it. We're going to make 171 copies of it and distribute it to all the defense lawyers.
And I wonder if there's another complicating factor here, of course, because there is a federal indictment out of San Antonio with a number of the same players that involves confidential informants, that sort of thing. And I wonder how much that the feds are not really wanting to play ball with Abel Reyna.
Oh, I suspect a great deal. And
yeah.
Actually, it occurred to me while I was watching that trial that this might be about somebody's federal aspirations, that Abel may have wanted to make a big splash so that maybe someday he could be the U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Texas. Right. I just sort of got that hunch. I could be wrong.
Or be the federal judge there in Waco.
Federal judge or yeah.
The man just looks like he stinks, though. He does, man. He sits there with the shaved head, and he looks like, I don't know what
JV,
side
that's
he's on, man. I'm
racist.
just saying, hey.
Can it
just
really
saying.
be racist coming
Yeah,
from?
I'm just
from
saying,
Julio?
man.
That's the joke. That's the
Just
joke.
saying.
I know.
So, wasn't there
make
some...
conversation.
Highlighting it. Could you do that in 280 characters for me?
No. Is it so? Let me ask you this: switching to the Twitter thing for just a second. Okay. Why are you so jacked up over 280? If people who do threads, do they count?
No, and I'm wondering about that too. Why there's not the same inelegance to a thread,
Right,
there
like
is
this
to 280.
guy,
But
like
with
this
a
guy
thread-
Seth Abramson, who's tweeting about all the Trump stuff. I mean, he does like 9 tweet threads.
So with a thread, if you want to follow the thread, you can follow the thread.
Yeah.
Right. If you want to see what the next tweet is, you can. And if you see that one tweet and say, "That's not interesting to me," you don't follow the thread.
True.
With 280, you can't. You get it, and especially if you're on a small screen, boy, it takes up half your screen.
Yeah. I'm not advocating it. I think I think there is an artwork to doing
There's an
it.
elegance to it, and anytime you have a game with rules, the harder the rules, the better you are. Which goes back to our prosecutors in Waco, right?
Yep.
They're not playing a game. They haven't had to play a game with hard rules, and so they're not very good at what they do. I mean, they're great at playing the game with loose rules, but if you brought them to a courtroom like, I don't know, Sim Lake's courtroom with a tight set of rules that they had to follow, they'd be totally incompetent. But if you take a lawyer like Jimmy, who plays in a courtroom with tight, strict rules, and you set him loose in a courtroom with loose rules, he's going to be frustrated by the fact that the rules
Yeah.
are so loose, but he's going to walk all over the prosecutors because the rules make us better.
And I think that's historically been a frustration of mine because my docket tends more on the federal side of things, whereas is very controlled, very strict. And then you get over to state court and you file a motion, and it's like, well, I mean,
Do we really need a hearing?
yeah. Do we really need to do that? And okay, so they didn't give you that when you asked for it, but
Right.
how are you really harmed by it?
No, we're not going to get this on the record.
Right,
no,
right,
we're not going to have
Those
this on-
rules,
Yeah.
those rules are advisory. Jimmy.
I know, yeah.
That's not directory. That's advisory.
It's fresh. I mean, I realize the nuances in how.
Did you like the segue back from Twitter to the law? By the
I
way,
did. You did a good job
Did I
doing
do-
that. It's almost as if you've hosted TV before.
Was it under 140 characters?
No, we're way beyond 100 on all of us. But I do, look, he's getting all he can get right now because all these guys have hired out-of-town lawyers, basically. I haven't really, maybe a few of them have hired some local lawyers, but
So-
you got Casey, you got Clint, you
Looney.
got Looney.
Oh, Looney.
Let me tell you, when Looney gets up there, I mean, you think Casey. I mean, they had that whole the Tribune reporter who is just. I mean, he's borderline stalking Casey. The articles he's writing about her. I mean, you think she's a firecracker? Wait till you see Paul in there.
Yeah,
And
and
he's going to tear him a new one.
and he'll have the discovery
Right.
too, thanks to not being the first one up. He'll have he'll have the recordings, and
Yeah.
if this thing goes well for Carrizal, I don't see there being a second
No.
Dito trial.
No.
But I think Looney has Cossacks, which might be a different thing.
True.
Because it does look, from the evidence that I've seen in this trial, like the Cossacks went there intending to do battle.
I was wondering what we had up on the screen. It's
Yeah, so
artwork.
that the drawing was of Abel Reyna pointing his be-Rolexed hand
Yeah.
at the accused. It's probably
kind of scary looking with the.
it's like a scarecrow. What is
Yeah.
that? I think that's Casey giving her closing argument. There's our $20,000 wristwatch pointed at the, So I got to see part of Jake's.
Child pointing at somebody.
Jake is a big dude, and he's also a little. He looks like a little baby.
No neck.
Looks like a
Yeah.
little baby.
You got like the linebacker neck roll. in there. It's the same artist who drew Tom Brady in federal court.
So I got to see the first part of Jake's testimony.
Yeah.
Just big, sweet kid. Just big, gentle, big dude. Big bushy beard, tattooed hands, but just a big, sweet, gentle kid. Just, and the state's case is not about him doing anything wrong. The state's case is he's wearing red and gold. He's a bandito. The banditos are a criminal street gang, and therefore he's guilty.
Our producer just gave me notice. If you're trying to call in, our phones aren't working. So go ahead and send us a tweet at HCCLA_TV. You will not get in over the phone to get your word in edgewise tonight. So utilize Twitter and do it in under 140, okay? I'm telling you. So I agree with you. I think if she walks him, they ain't going to try anything else. Maybe they'll try the Cossack case from a little bit different angle.
How many defendants are there?
171.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
What? Abel's gonna need a lot of cocaine, right? Y'all didn't see that? Y'all didn't
Where did
hear
that
about
come
that? You didn't hear about that?
That was the segue to end all
You didn't hear
segues.
about
What the
that?
heck?
So as JV's First Amendment lawyer, let me point out that was parody. No, Clint Broden, who's the lawyer for some of these. For some of the bikers, has said that he has a witness who says that he delivered cocaine to the chief prosecutor, Abel Reyna, at the around the time that these charges were being discussed and being filed. Of course, we don't know the truth of that, but I think it's fair for discussion that a lawyer puts in a pleading this allegation against the guy, the public servant with the $40,000 wristwatch.
I agree.
Start to connect the dots here. I don't know.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. Well, we hope to get Casey on the show. I think she told us she's going to come on, so we'll put it up on Facebook. We'll put it up on Twitter and let you know when she's going to come on. Okay, one final thing before we get out of here. We got a few minutes, and I want to talk about this last thing in the time we have left. The judges put forth the plan for rebuilding our criminal justice center and jury assembly center, I should say. Needless to say, I was unimpressed. They want to rebuild completely the existing jury assembly center.
As it was before.
As it was before.
Underground.
Underground.
Possibly changing materials, but that's it.
Make it water resistant. They might.
And they're going to buy furniture that can float and be.
But
Everyone will have floaties.
but they don't know why it flooded,
That was the most amazing thing.
right?
They can't even tell from the video like where the water came from.
We are going to rebuild this thing just the same as it was, even though we can't tell why it flooded
There's
in the
only
first
two
place.
ways it got in there. I'm sorry. It either came in the front door or it came through the basement.
It could have seeped up through the concrete over millennia. This is known to happen.
I
Fair
guess.
enough, fair enough.
Maybe it was just there already
Yeah.
before the rain started. It was just right about to come out. And the rain was just a coincidence. It's
Yeah.
been seeping up for a million years. No, so what startles me about this is that, an engineer will tell you haven't fixed a problem until you know what was wrong. Right? And so they don't know what was wrong and they're just going to rebuild it. You know what's going to happen. We all know what we're going to be talking about a year from now on this show.
It is
And we
coming.
can save this clip because we can flip back to it and say,
Yeah.
remember in November of last year how we talked about how that basement was going to be flooded again within a year? Here we are.
We are. And so, I'm stunned, and I'm sure Chris Tritico is too, that they didn't adopt his plan just right on the spot. let's go across the street, tear down the Family Law Center, use the bond money you already have allocated, and build a new building. No, instead, we're going to analyze how to rebuild the CJC, the Criminal Justice Center, including possibly putting elevators in.
Escalators.
Escalators, I'm sorry.
Possibly move courts down lower, which we've been talking about for years. The reason those courts are up so high is judges' egos. The misdemeanor courts ought to be on low floors where people can walk up to them or take escalator rides.
And so this is what we get. We get a rebuild plan of buildings that have been catastrophically damaged.
I think we put the courts in the basement.
Yeah. Now,
And here's something else. I know this isn't on our schedule, but consider how few judicial resources we've been using since the storm, right? Judges have been working half days. They've been sharing courthouses. You know what that means? It means we can get rid of some courts. We don't need them, right? We've got too many judges and too many courts, and they're proving it because they're working half days, visibly working half days. Of course, we've always known they work half days, but they're sharing courtrooms. And if you have two judges sharing courtroom, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, you only need one judge.
They all seem to be getting along famously too.
there's only one incident, but
When your enemy is in the process of destroying himself, Paul, do not interfere.
well, so I was told by somebody the other day who actually got called for jury service that right off the bat, because we have panels now again, we've started at least a couple trials. We got two misdemeanor courts, I believe,
They're up. I mean, they're up.
But they've got 2 courtrooms to try cases over in the Family Law Center.
Yep.
Old Family Law Center.
And they got one over on top of in the law library.
And then I guess the Judge Hart and Judge Bradley have figured out some sharing structure so that they can try bond cases in their courtroom. And that's the only felony courts going. Now, I heard from somebody who went to jury duty this week that almost right off the bat, they get everybody, they have a pretty good turnout, and they send a third of the panel home. You know? So, I mean, we're getting people down there, but we're not.
And that may just be an adjustment required too,
Sure.
because they don't know how many people are going to turn up, and that's a high class problem to have. You know,
Exactly.
we wish we had that problem when we had a whole jury assembly room.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll calibrate. You know, Chris Daniels. I didn't think Chris Daniels would make a great district clerk when he first ran. He ran against Lauren, and I liked Lauren, but Chris Daniels the right guy for that job.
He is
right now
Yeah.
more than ever because he's got the engineering background and he can, you know, it's an engineering problem now.
Let's say
Criminal justice.
That it is.
let's say they tear down the family building. Where do all the courts go in the interim?
I don't think that there's a lot of court going. Oh, you mean the criminal courts, the misdemeanor courts that
Right.
are in there right now?
Right.
Yeah. Trailers parked on top of the jury assembly room, I guess.
Wow, that would be
They
something.
start having court in the streets, I suppose.
Portable buildings for courtrooms. I mean, that would be something.
I'll bet there's a nice conference room at Jimmy's new office.
We could turn it into a mock trial room.
Hey, who did
We have a mock trial room. Have you seen our courtroom?
I have.
Yeah, we have a courtroom.
I have.
Norm and I.
Look, if the county, if they
We could use for misdemeanor trials. We could use our mock courtroom in our
Well, but
office.
look, I mean, you pointed out though that they're using the courtrooms half a day. I mean, if you eliminated what we talked about a couple weeks ago, eliminated the number of defendants coming down, you could easily, I think, have some trials going on in the civil courthouse.
Yeah.
And structured, and maybe you only go 3 days a week, or and you have docket calls on the other 2 days. I don't know, but you know, I think there's a way to try it and see what you can do. But it's, I'm frankly surprised at how well this thing has worked.
I am too.
Yeah.
I am too.
It actually hasn't been that bad considering they had to put this together in a matter of like what, a couple weeks.
I'm a little bit disappointed at how well it's worked.
I know.
Honestly, I was hoping for a lot more chaos. I thrive on chaos. We all do. And I was hoping for a lot more chaos.
I know, kind of the masochist in me wanted to just see, you know, just nutters all over the place, just, you know,
Yeah.
pitchforks and everything. Like
Caveat being, I hate jail docket. I just hate it. It's
terrible.
Oh my God, it's the worst.
I haven't had to do
It's
it.
terrible.
Going down, getting down into 701 or 1200 Baker, wherever it is, it's just
It's terrible, and they all want you to be in 2 to 3 places at once.
Oh, and I used to think that the afternoon dockets would be great. They stink because you'll have morning and afternoon, which screws up your whole day. If it were afternoon one day and morning the other, it wouldn't be so bad.
You're telling me that's all the time we have now.
All right, sorry.
We were a little bit behind on our time runs here, so I gotta let everybody go, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you joining us this evening for Reasonable Doubt. We'll be back next week, but I want to thank our guests, Mark Bennett and Paul Morgan. Appreciate y'all stopping by. And we'll be back next week. Check out Facebook and Twitter for our topics next week, and we'll let you know as soon as we can when Miss Gotro is going to come on, because that should be a feisty episode. But anyway, we'll see you next week, ladies and gentlemen. Good night.